No one dreams of growing old with debt. I worked all my life, saving for my retirement, so that when I was 65 I could drink coffee on the veranda and catch bass every Saturday. And now I'm sitting in the kitchen reading a letter from the bank saying that we're 3 months past due on our mortgage. How? We didn't have any debts, I thought. My name is Jim Harris. I'm 68 years old. And my wife Cindy and I live in a suburb of Denver. We have a nice house, a neat lawn, and a daughter who lives an hour away. It's almost like a postcard. I've just retired from the workforce. Cindy still works part-time something online, she says, because she's bored. I didn't interfere. Until yesterday. Cindy has been my wife for 42 years. She's cheerful, stubborn, and loves to cook, although lately she's been ordering everything online. She is not very close to her daughter, but she constantly looks at her Instagram stories and comments on them. It makes me laugh. I am a former mechanic. My hands hurt a little, but my soul sang when I wrote my resignation letter. I dreamed of finally getting enough sleep, watching TV shows, not getting up at 5 in the morning. Everything was ruined by one piece of paper. A letter from the bank. Not just a reminder, but a threat. 3 months overdue, and I didn't even know we were still paying for the house. We should have paid it off long ago. I called Cindy. She said, "Don't worry, it was a mistake. I'll fix it." But her voice, it was trembling. I could hear that tremor even when she broke my favorite fishing rod and said she hadn't touched it. This trembling was like a siren before a storm. After lunch, I went to the pantry where she kept boxes of things for charity. And do you know what I found? Not clothes, not old shoes. A box full of letters. Bank statements and a credit cards. Advertisements for online stores. I didn't know she had so many cards. I sat down on the floor. Not because I was tired, but because my legs couldn't hold me up. These letters were like needles under my fingernails. There were payments on loans I never took out. Signed, Cindy. Date. The amount. Almost $10,000 for some online shopping, and that was just on one statement. When she came back, I was waiting for her with those papers. Listen, I didn't yell. I just showed her. She stopped as if someone had pressed pause. "Cindy," I said, "what is this?" She looked at me, then at the chair. She sat down and said, "It's not what you think. Classic. It's always not what you think." She began to explain that it was temporary expenses, that she was bored at home, that she had a little too much to buy, that everything is under control. How much is a little, Cindy? I don't will. Maybe about 20,000. I sat down again, and then I stood up, and then I sat down again, because the number, it was ringing in my ears. 20,000. This is our annual budget for 2. I know that's all our savings. I went to the backyard and sat on the swing. I looked up at the sky. Geese were flying there. They were flying somewhere, and I was sitting there petrified. I used to be afraid of death. Now I'm afraid that I will have to live a long time. Without a penny. I thought it was an isolated case, that everything could be settled. But the next day I received another letter, and then another one, and then another one. She wasn't just spending a little bit. She was living a parallel life, and it was costing us our old age. I decided to dig deeper, and what I found on her computer made me scream at the top of my lungs. But more about that tomorrow. Everyone has their own secrets. But when these secrets are not hidden in your wallet, but in the heart of the person you have loved for over 40 years, it is no longer just a secret. It is a knife in the back. I opened Cindy's computer to check her bank account, and I stumbled upon her other life. I couldn't sleep that night. She was lying next to me, breathing steadily, and I was looking at the ceiling and trying to understand how we got here. And I trusted her. I trusted her completely, without a trace of doubt. All these years I thought we were on the same wavelength. But as it turned out, she had long been listening to a different radio. I waited for her to go to her friend's yoga class. It was no problem to take her laptop. The password is our wedding date. It was both painful and symbolic. I opened her email. then the browser tabs, then shopping apps. At first, it was innocent clothes, cosmetics, and little things for the kitchen. And then, purchases for 1,000, 1.5, 2. And all in some unfamiliar brands, luxury creams, vitamins, goods from Japan Electronics. Then it got worse. It turned out that she was subscribed to a private Telegram channel. Something like Women's Joys After 50. There are tips on how to not grow old in your soul, live brightly, pamper yourself, and most importantly, how to hide expenses from your husband. It's very clear instructions, straightforward step-by-step advice. And Cindy is an active participant. She put hearts, commented, shared photos of her purchases. I sat there and couldn't believe it. Is this our great love? Where is the sincerity? Where is the respect? Where is even a crumb of what we have been building all our lives? I read her messaging. I bought new Bose headphones without telling Jim. I said it was a discount from the store for loyalty. He still thinks I spend $20 a month on myself. He's so naive. Old age is not a sentence, but a reason to finally live for yourself. It was like a sip of gasoline. It burns from the inside. I knew we were not a perfect couple, but I believed that at least we still had honesty. And her? Lita, she laughs at me on the internet with other people's women. I didn't even know what to say. I was just sitting in the kitchen, twirling the cup with my fingers and thinking, is this the end? When she came back, I was ready. I showed her the screen. Do you really think I'm a naive idiot? Jim. No, not Jim. $20,000. Several credit cards. Bullshit. Telegram groups for conspirators. What else do I need to know? She sat down across from me, twirling her ring nervously. I was scared. I was afraid that you would think I was old and useless, that I had lost myself. I wanted to feel that I still had the right to be happy. She started to cry. Not loudly. I don't know what happened to me. At first it was just little things. And then I felt a sense of control. I could do things on my own. Without you, without advice, without permission. I listened. I didn't know what was worse, her tears or the fact that she had been living a double life for years. We are not talking about the fact that retirement is also stressful. It is for both of them. For her as a woman who has lost her youth. For me as a man who has lost his purpose. And while I was planning to fish, she was catching herself by piece buys, orange shopping, likes, and other people's advice. We decided to go to a family psychologist. But the next day I found out that she had made another transfer secretly, for the amount equal to my pension for 2 months. And then I realizing the problem is deeper than I thought. And this story is far from over. You live your whole life, you work, you save. And then you suddenly find out that your pension is not peace of mind, but a credit trap. That every call is a debt collector. That every morning coffee tastes like fear. And debt is not a number. It's the feeling that someone has quietly betrayed you. After that night, I hoped that things had improved. That Cindy had realized that we were on the verge. That we would talk about everything now. But real problems don't end with words. They grow like mold in the dark. I went to the bank first to check my balance, and I came out with shaky legs, 3 credit cards, 2 loans, $5,000 in overdrafts. She paid some of the bills partially. Others she simply ignored. The banker, a young man with a serious face, looked at me like a child asking to play a cartoon again. You should talk to a financial advisor, sir, and maybe a lawyer. And I went outside and felt like I couldn't feel the ground under my feet. It wasn't just a debt. It was the destruction of my way of life, my dream of old age, of peace of us. That evening I sat down with her, quietly. No shouting. I just laid the documents in front of her. I looked her in the eye. What is it? I thought I could cover everything. There were a couple of big purchases, but I didn't want to worry you. $15,000 is not a couple of big purchases, Cindy, our safety net. It was our vacation. It was a chance to not have to worry about the hospital or a new refrigerator. She cried. Again. But these tears were no longer pitiful. They were like rain after a flood, unnecessary. I didn't know when to stop, she said. I thought if I bought one more thing, I would feel better. I was afraid of getting old. I was afraid of being useless. For the first time, I saw her not as a wife, but as a drowning person. She was grabbing at everything. Some people drink, some play in casinos, and she buys. Something clicked in her after she turned 60. Until she got lost in trends and bloggers and TikTok pseudopsychology, and I didn't notice. A few days later, she called me for the first time. The voice was cold, mechanical, intrusive. Are you Jim Stanley? Yes. We represent Northwest Capital. You have a debt that you and your wife have not paid. We're offering an installment plan. I hung up. An hour later, they called again and again and again. The mailbox is swamped. Even Cindy was scared. They know my name. They know our addresses. They wrote me that they could come home. We were sitting in the kitchen, the lights were off, because she was afraid someone was waiting for us. It's not just debt anymore, Jim. This is a nightmare. Didn't you know it was a nightmare when you gave your card to every app on your phone? I went to a local lawyer. Free consultation for pensioners. Gray-haired, good-natured, he listened to me carefully. You need to check whether these loans were not issued without your consent. And think about bankruptcy. At 71. Sometimes it's not the end, sir. It's a new beginning. Even if it's a bitter one. And I came home and Cindy was still on the phone. Her fingers were running across the screen. I approached quietly, and she was in that Telegram channel again. Again with advice. Discounts again. And then I realized that we were dealing not just with debt. We are dealing with an addiction. The internet is a magical world. In it, you can find love, knowledge, salvation, and destroy yourself to the last penny. Especially when you're not looking for a way out, but for an escape. Escape from aging, from silence, from a reality that had long ceased to be gentle. I stood behind her and looked at the screen. A Telegram channel with names like Bargains Today, Discounts for Queens, Wardrobe After 60. Cindy scrolled through, swallowing each phrase like a drug. Her eyes were sparkling. She didn't notice me again. It wasn't just she likes to shop. It was deeper than that. Cunning descriptions of goods, colorful pictures, phrases like only until midnight. And this is a trap. And she'd been in it for a long time. Are you ordering again? I asked. She flinched and quickly blocked the phone. No, I'm just looking. Just for fun. But I saw that there were already 2 pairs of shoes waiting for payment, which she definitely didn't need. And another anti-aging serum from Japan. Don't you think it's a disease? You're exaggerating, Jim. It just makes me feel better. We're getting calls from debt collectors. We're thinking about bankruptcy. You're cheering us up. She jumped up as if she'd been hit. Do you know the last time I felt beautiful? When I bought a dress and the saleswoman complimented me. You haven't told me I'm pretty in years. And that website, those things, they give me that. They give you fake attention. And the bills. I started checking the statements. Over the past 6 months, I've made more than 35 online orders. Lotions, kitchen gadgets, jewelry, clothes that were never even unpacked. And then there were the subscriptions. Her smartphone was full of apps that charged us money every month. I went to Google for the first time, not for a recipe or news, but to type online shopping addiction in the elderly. And it turned out we were not alone. It's a new pandemic, one article said, and no one is talking about it out loud. The algorithms worked ruthlessly. Her age, gender, requests, all of this was collected and turned into advertising. And she lived in this bubble of upgrade yourself. The secret of youth after 60. Old age is not a sentence if you know what to order. We had a real fight. For the first time, I didn't hold back. Maybe I should buy you a wardrobe for things you haven't even opened. I didn't know I was marrying an accountant, not a man. And I didn't know I'd be living with an internet addict in my old age. She hit me. Not hard. just with the palm of her hand on my chest. But I felt that blow longer than I should have. It wasn't just anger, it was "you don't see me." Later, when the emotion subsided, she came. She sat down next to me. I'm scared. But I wake up and think today I am still alive. But what happens next? Everything is falling apart. My body is getting old. Children are far away. You are silent. And the internet says, "Buy this and everything will be fine." I hugged her. For a long time. Like at the beginning. And I said something I hadn't said in a long time, and I see you. I'm right here. We don't have to hide from old age. We have to live it together. She cried again. But this time it was different. I'm scared, Jim. But I want to try to stop it. We made a list of subscriptions. We unsubscribed from everything unnecessary. I helped her delete some of her favorite Telegram channels. We agreed that if we wanted to buy something, we should do it together and only after discussing it. I thought we were on the right track. But the next morning, I saw her logging into the new site. The same colors again, and the same discounts. And I realized that it would be harder than I thought. When you get a call from the bank, it's either a temptation or a disaster. And when you're retired and your phone rings in the afternoon, you know it's not going to be good. Because the financial abyss does not scream at you right away. It calls politely, in the voice of an operator, and says, "We want to clarify a few details." The phone rang for a long time. I was sleeping after my morning walk when I heard a vibration. An unfamiliar number from Washington. I thought as I picked up the phone, "Hello, Harris?" "Yes, I'm listening." "This is Trust United Bank. We're suspicious of activity in your joint account." My heart sank. Up here, they hadn't said anything concrete yet, but I could already feel something heavy and cold in my stomach. Can you confirm the purchase of a gold pendant for $598 at Golden Charms?" "What?" "No." And 2 other transactions at Globe Cosmetics." "No. I don't even know what that is. And unfortunately, your account has been used for multiple purchases over the past 2 weeks." I sat down. My head was spinning. I remembered the moments when Cindy had asked for my password just to check my balance once. I hung up the phone and went to the kitchen. She was making tea. Smiling, in her bathrobe. "As usual, have you and Aunt Cindy, have you bought anything lately?" Me. "Well, maybe a couple of things. Why do you ask?" "You've spent over $1,000 in 2 weeks." No discussion. Without my permission. Her smile faded. She put down her spoon. "I was going to pay it back. It's just..." "Just what?" "We had a deal, Cindy. We promised each other." She began to explain. I saw that jewelry, and it reminded me of my youth. You know how it is when you want to feel alive. How am I supposed to feel alive when you're hiding from me again behind online shopping? I don't know who you are anymore. Jim. No, listen to me. I feel like a fool. I feel like a fool, and not with any other man, with my phone. I started digging further. I checked the purchase history. More than 30 orders. Some of them were in her maiden name. She was hiding it. It wasn't just lack of control. It was intentional. It was systematic. And what struck me was not what she spent. It was the fact that she lied. We lived together for 42 years. We built a house together. We raised our children. We traveled across the country in a trailer. And now she can't tell me that she bought a bottle of perfume for $180. "Oh, you don't trust me," she said quietly. "That's not the point. It's you who don't trust me. You're lying. You've always been so strict. So, accountant. I was afraid you'd look at me like I was a fool." I'd rather look at you with concern than with anger now." She started to cry. But this time I didn't hug her. I couldn't. I was crying too, but in silence. We often talk about young people and their addictions. But no one asks what pensioners do when they have silence, and the phone, and a card. Cindy fell victim not only to advertising, but also to a culture of emphasizing the loss of youth. Entire platforms make money off people like her. The next day I received a letter. A financial warning. If we don't pay off the loan within a month, We will be foreclosed on. I sat on the porch with this letter. My neighbor Louisa was passing by. She saw me and asked, "Are you okay, Jim?" Oh, I didn't know what to say. Because how do you explain that your wife broke your trust? And your old age. That evening I found another credit card in her purse. It was in her name. Had she started a new life? Without me. I looked at that card, and one question kept running through my mind. Is this still shopping me? Or is it running away from me? Confession is not always a purification. Sometimes it is the last nail in the coffin of a relationship. And when you hear the truth from someone you've shared a bed with for 40 years, sometimes you want to go back into ignorance. Cindy was sitting on the couch with her hands in her lap. I stood by the window, looking at the yellow leaves falling from the oak tree across the street. It was autumn, the time when everything dies off beautifully. I found the card, I said calmly, as if we were talking about the weather. She sighed like a person with nothing to lose. So now you know everything, not everything. I only know that you were hiding something. What else was there? She was silent for a moment. Then quietly but clearly, I opened a credit card 2 years ago, without you, because I was ashamed to ask, because you always counted every cent. Because I didn't want to be a burden. You're a burden? You're my wife. We've been together all our lives, and you're living a double life. I just wanted some joy. Something that belongs only to me. Because all my life I took care of everyone in you, the children, my mother-in-law. And when we retired, I realized that I didn't know who I was. Her voice trembled, her eyes sparkled. These purchases, it was my attempt to become a woman again. Not a grandmother. Not a cook. At the expense of our home, our peace, there were only a few feet of space between us. You wouldn't have understood anyway, she whispered. You didn't even give me a chance, I replied. It was like we were in 2 different movies. She was in a romantic drama about finding yourself. I was in a thriller about financial betrayal. And I remembered all those evenings when she said she was going, just to look at her phone. Those moments when she seemed happy for no reason. And I thought it was retirement enlightenment. It wasn't. It was deliveries, fittings, boxes that I didn't notice. And I felt like an idiot. An idiot who believed that love was just living together, and she wanted to feel alive. On Facebook, her friends posted photos of their unboxings, showing new dresses, cosmetics, jewelry. So why didn't you talk to me? I almost shouted. Because you always had the answers. And I didn't want answers. I wanted feelings. Have you? Why? She felt alive. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really had become a banking app in a pensioner's body. I sat down next to her. I didn't touch her. I just sat down. Good. You spent it. How much do we owe? About $13,000. I feel like I've been electrocuted. I know, I get it. But I couldn't stop. It's not shopping anymore. It's an addiction. She nodded. I was afraid that if I stopped, I'd be left with nothing. Not even myself. And suddenly I saw her not as a culprit. I saw her as a person who was lost in time. She didn't have time to change with the world. And now she was trying to buy youth with a credit card. We need to take a break, I said. Are you leaving? I'm going to think. Not about how to punish you. I'm going to think about how to save myself. She didn't cry, and she just nodded. And it hurt more than tears. In the evening, I got into an old Ford and drove to our daughter's house. She opened the door and looked at Meg. Dad. What happened? I just whispered, I don't know who my wife is. Don't think I know who I am anymore. You always think that you can hide from your children what really tears you up inside. But not everything can be hidden, especially when the truth is ready to explode. The car stopped in front of an old house. I got out on the sidewalk and looked at the door calmly. It looked the same as it had 20 years ago. When Cindy and I brought our little daughter here, she was 6 years old then and smiled when we bought her first sneakers. You can see that my daughter has become an adult, and I seem to have remained the same old father who always knew what to do. But today, perhaps, I was the one who needed advice. "Hi, Dad," she said when she opened the door. Liana, our daughter, was standing in the hallway with a cup of coffee, as she looked like me, but her eyes had something completely different. They were smarter. "Hi," I said, trying to hide my excitement. "Can we talk?" Liana looked at me in surprise, then nodded and led me into the living room. What's wrong?" "You look like something happened." I didn't say anything. My heart was beating hard, as if everything was about to change. We sat down at the table. Liana looked at me carefully. Oh, I could see that she was trying to understand why my father looked so broken. "It's about Mom, isn't it?" she asked without waiting for an answer. I nodded, feeling my chest tighten. I began and then fell silent again. Oh, I didn't know where to start. How to say that the mother who seemed like everything to me was suddenly a stranger? How to tell my daughter that her mother was hiding a secret that could destroy everything we had built? How my fingers slid over the cup. How many years had I taken care of her? How many nights had I stayed awake thinking that we were building our future together? And now I have to explain to her that I have never been a true partner in my relationship with Cindy. I never imagined that was possible. Then I found out that she opened my credit card without my permission. I began swallowing nervously and spent almost $13,000. On what? I didn't know. Liana froze. "Spent it, Mom?" "Yes." But then I don't know why she did it, but now I realize it wasn't just shopping. It was her attempt to escape from the situation we all found ourselves in. The pension, the restrictions. And then, I guess, the feeling that there was no room for her own life anymore. "And you never suspected?" Her voice became more hollow. "No. Liana, I was blind. Maybe I didn't want to see. Dad, you always tried to keep things under control. But Mom, she was always different. And now it's so hard when everything you thought was perfect is suddenly destroyed." I understand. I took a deep breath, but it's hard to accept that it happened this way. It's not like she did it to hurt me. She did it because she couldn't stop herself. "Maybe you didn't really see each other, Dad. Aneka, maybe she didn't know how to address you." I looked at her. Her words went straight through my heart. In fact, had I ever asked Cindy about her experiences? How she felt about all of this? I had always been focused on making sure everything was okay with the finances. We sat in silence for a long time. I still couldn't believe what had happened. "Nakuta, hurts that you have to hear this from me," I said, looking at my daughter. "I didn't want you to worry about it. Dad, I will always love you. But you have to realize that Mom is not perfect. Ayabapoka Dan think that she had to do it right. She did the best she could, and she didn't have to hide it from you. But maybe you weren't entirely honest with her either. I guess I'm not ready to talk to Mom yet." I sighed. "Boot. When you are, we all have to talk, Dad, because not talking won't help you or us. You don't always get a second chance. And when you do, you start to realize that the guilt can be heavier than any attempt to justify your mistakes." I stood in front of her door, trembling with thoughts. There was no longer that feeling of confidence I had felt before when we were making plans for our old age together. Now everything was much more complicated. Cindy was inside, and I knew that this meeting was the last opportunity for both of us. Every step toward the door seemed like a step into the unknown. I didn't know if I would be able to find the words. And even more, whether she would be ready to hear me. How many times had I convinced myself that I could fix everything? How many nights had I thought that her absence from my life was just a phase? But now I stood in front of her door and didn't know if this chance was worth opening it. 3 days ago, I made the last call to our bank. It turned out that the debt was much bigger than I could have imagined. The $13,000 was just the beginning. And somewhere inside me, anger woke up. How had I not noticed this? How did I not notice how we were slowly heading towards the abyss? But then the thought came, maybe I didn't want to see it. Cindy had always been so closed, so distant. but I was not prepared for the fact that she could bury her problems so deeply. Maybe I was partly to blame for what happened. He and I called her when I heard her familiar voice on the other end of the phone. Yes, she answered briefly. Why don't you come in? Her tone was calm. But why did I hear such disappointment in her voice? I want to talk. Ilya, we need to solve this together. I realized that I could no longer keep secrets. And although this conversation was as difficult as all the previous ones, I had to give her one last chance to realize that there could still be something real between us. When I opened the door, I saw her sitting on the couch. Cindy was just as I remembered her, with an expression I could recognize with my eyes closed. Sad eyes, a little bit teary, but still calm. She didn't even try to hide anything as she used to. Do you want to talk about money, she asked, looking at me curiously. No, I sat down next to her. I want to talk about us, about how we forgot about each other, and why we started looking for excuses instead of building something real. You're right, I didn't want you to know. It was for me. Just for me? I didn't think it was that important to you. I thought I could control everything. I didn't need her to justify it. I didn't care why she did it. I knew why. And I realized that he just needed to apologize and accept her choice. Because we all have our dark corners, where we don't want to let even the closest people in. I did it too. I looked at her. I wasn't the man I should have been. Maybe I didn't notice you the way you needed me to. But now I want to make it right. Cindy lowered her head. I saw her eyes fill with tears. It was more than just anger over money. It was a recognition of what she and I had lost. We had lost us. The couple who once dreamed of old age, of living together in peace, of spending time together. It was more than a debt, it was our destruction. What are we going to do? She asked, looking at me. I took a deep breath. We are going to try to get back what we have lost. If not for ourselves, then at least for Lyanna. She looked me in the eye. Her gaze was sad, but it no longer had the hopeless sadness of a few months ago. I'm ready. It was unexpected, but it was palpable. But will it be enough? Will we be able to save what we have left? Can we really find our way back after so much has been lost? Is it possible to return to what has been lost? Or will we just try to fit the uncomfortable pieces into the broken picture? The night I left Cindy at her apartment, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring into the darkness, feeling cold inside. We tried to talk, to understand each other, but was it enough to go back? I realized that there would be many more difficult moments ahead. Perhaps more than I could handle. It was not just a debt. It wasn't just a drama that we went through. It was a deep crack in our relationship that was hard to even notice at first. And now, after all the talks and tears, I was beginning to realize that we were on the brink. We were becoming more and more like two people who just existed next to each other instead of being for each other. That evening we were sitting at the table and I asked Gersq, "Have you ever thought that we might break up?" And as she looked at me as if she didn't understand what I meant. But I saw the same thing in her eyes that I saw in mining doubt. Fear, and even some quiet, unspoken recognition that we might not make it. "Hasu, I don't know," she said quietly. "It hurts, but I don't know if there's a chance. We all want to believe that we can make it, that we can change the situation." But at that moment I felt my arms dropping, and I didn't have the strength to keep fighting, but I couldn't let it go without trying again. I remember how we met, how Cindy's eyes were full of dreams. We built a life together, and everything seemed so easy. But where did we get lost? When did we stop talking? When did we stop supporting each other? How many times did we just turn away from problems, believing that they would solve themselves? This crazy rhythm of life, constant talk about money, plans for the future, new purchases, all this has become part of our routine. We stopped paying attention to the small signs that showed that something was wrong between us. And now, when everything was on the brink, I was asking myself, is it possible to take it all back? There was a tear in her eyes, just one, but it meant so much. It was a tear of loss, not only because of the financial problems, but also because of what we had lost at one point. Each of us tried to go about our business, but this bond that held us together began to peel away. And I got up from my seat and walked over to her. It had never been so difficult for me to approach her, but I had to do it. I stretched out my hand, and in her eyes I saw what I had wanted to see all my life: hope. We can change this," I said quietly. "We have to try. This is the last chance." She didn't answer, just shook her head. It was like being punched in the face. All my hopes for salvation began to crumble. Was it worth continuing the fight if I was only losing more with every step? Was there still a chance for us? But after a few seconds, she raised her head and looked at me. And in her eyes I saw what I had been afraid of for so long: a decision. "I don't know if we can change everything," she said, "but I'm ready to try. It won't be easy, but maybe we can find a new way. If not for us, then for our daughter." I could feel the weight on my shoulders lessening, but at the same time a new fear was emerging. We were going to start all over again, but what if we couldn't take it again? Well, what if we break down again, just like before? But, on the other hand, what if this is our last chance to build what we once had? What if this attempt is the only road to happiness we can travel together? I realized that this decision would not be easy, but together with her I was ready to make it. It was not just a problem with money. It was a problem with us, with our beliefs and the way we treated each other. But at that moment I knew we had a chance. Those who fight do not lose. But would it be enough to save us? Will we be able to overcome all the problems and find our way back to each other? What will remain when everything we once built together falls apart? How will we live with what we have lost? This was not just a conversation. It was the final test. We were sitting on the same couch where we had once discussed our dreams for the future. Now we were holding only the fragments of our former reality. All the bitterness of the past months hit me, and I felt it getting harder and harder to breathe. Not from financial problems, not from debts, not from stress, but from the realization that our relationship was falling apart, like the collection of beautiful porcelain figures we had been so carefully collecting all this time. And I saw it in her eyes, even though she tried not to show it. Her every move was cautious, as if she was afraid I would break. She was no longer the same woman I had once loved madly. I knew it, but I didn't want to admit it. We both became different people. And even though I tried to find the strength to take it all back, this feeling that we were both trapped kept haunting me. You can't bring back the time when you looked at a person and believed that they would do anything to make you happy. You can't get back what you lost together. What is left are the fragments, and those pieces are sometimes heavier than the situation itself. Tell me, do you still want to fix this? I asked her, looking into her eyes, trying to find even one small piece of evidence that we could still be together. Cindy didn't answer right away. She raised her hand as if trying to say something, but she couldn't. She was still trying to find the right words, but she felt like they didn't exist anymore. And her face was covered with sadness, and I could feel her gradually pulling away from me. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Everything seems so hard. And even if we try, I'm not sure we can bring everything back. Everything has changed. We've changed." Her words pierced my heart, but I couldn't deny it. We both made a lot of mistakes. Both my mistakes and hers. My illusions that I would be able to solve all the financial difficulties only made things worse. And her secret expenses, whatever they were only part of the picture, but not the only reason for our crisis. In the end, we were still faced with something that could not be ignored. And so we sat together, both exhausted, and asked ourselves, "Ceci, is it possible to repair what is already broken? Is there a way to regain the trust we've lost? And is it worth it?" I asked, trying to figure out if we could find a new purpose, a new meaning in what was left. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the same disappointment as in mine. The relationship between us was no longer the same as before. We were more and more like two people who just stayed in the same house, but no longer had the connection that once held us together. "I don't know," she said. "But if we want to save this, we need to be honest. We need to rebuild trust, and it's going to be very hard." These words were the final push for both of us. Although we realized that without frankness, without the willingness to change and accept each other with all our flaws, our relationship had no future. But I also realized that some things we could not take back, and we, as people, cannot remain the same. And although we would try to rebuild our relationship, some of the scars would remain forever. And although Cindy and I still loved each other, the road might be too long and difficult to travel together. And so we stood on the threshold of a new stage in our lives. Maybe together again, or maybe on our own. But it was a moment when we both had to decide whether we were ready to rebuild our shattered lives or continue to live, accepting the new reality. What lies ahead? Will we be able to find a way to a new life, or will we be left with the wreckage of the past? What do we lose and what do we gain along the way? When everything seems to be on the verge of breaking down, when even the sky seems burdened with a heavy fog, is it possible to find the right answer? Is there a choice that can change everything? We were sitting on the same couch. But now it was not the place where we spent our evenings sharing our dreams. It was a place where we were choosing how to live our lives. And I think Cindy and I both knew that this would be our last chance. The last opportunity to change everything we had created or to let go. She was sitting next to me, her face serious, but I saw something else in her eyes, a hope that we were both trying to hide. I had to make a choice. A choice that would not only change my life, but also change everything I had ever known about love and about us. It was harder than anything I had ever faced. Could I leave everything behind and start from scratch, or could I try again with the same risk that we would just repeat the same old mistakes? I looked at her and, gathering the remnants of my courage, answered, "I don't know, but I'm willing to try. If we don't try, then what? We'll just break up and that's it. I'm not ready for that." Her eyes widened a little as if she hadn't expected such words. It was more than just a promise. It was the courage I had been looking for in myself lately. I knew that if we chose each other again, it would not be just a choice in the usual sense. It would be an effort, a struggle. But were we ready to go down that road? Cindy took a deep breath, as if she had gathered all her inner strength. "We've lost a lot," she said. "And I know we've made a lot of mistakes. But shouldn't we try not to give up for once in our lives? I don't want to end up feeling like there was still some hope." These words were like completely new to me. They sounded not like a standard phrase about starting over, but like a sincere attempt to find a new path based on everything we had experienced. Was it worth it? Wouldn't it have been better to just break up and forget? How about I couldn't forget how we laughed together, how we built a future together that never happened? Would I be able to forgive her expenses, her hidden secrets? We both sat in silence, as if heavy thoughts filled the space between us. And I could feel my heart beating faster, but I couldn't bring myself to figure out what to do. What if I choose the wrong path? What if these efforts lead to nothing? It seemed we were both afraid of the same thing, that it might end, that we would be left with nothing but emptiness, and that these pieces of rubble would be what would be left behind. I don't want to live with the feeling that I didn't try," I said quietly. That was my answer, and it was desperate. I was ready to take the risk again, even knowing how hard it would be. Cindy looked at me with concern in her eyes, but also with understanding. We could have chosen to give up everything and go our separate ways. It would have been safer. But we chose this, a choice that changes everything. If we do this, there will be no going back," she said seriously. "We will have to change. I am ready. Then I am ready to do everything so that we are not just two people living under the same roof, but never finding our way to each other." These words were the real beginning of a new stage for us. and we decided to give it a try, not knowing what lay ahead. And although this decision did not bring immediate results, it gave us a chance for a new beginning, a chance to find again what we had once lost. Anea, what is the price of our choice? Will we be able to go through this journey together, or will our paths diverge? It's over, but is it really over? The silence after a storm is sometimes the worst. When everything we knew is destroyed, but there are still questions that have not been answered. And now, after all this, what have we left behind? Months passed after Cindy and I made our choice. Manu decided to stay together, despite all the difficulties, despite all the moments when we were on the brink. I thought it would be hard, and I was right. We started a new life, but this new beginning seemed as difficult as the previous one. The storm that passed through our relationship left traces, and these marks were deep. Sometimes, sitting in our room, I felt like there was an invisible wall between us. It became insurmountable, and although we continued to live together, something was still out of place. The choice we made was not just a decision to stay together, it was a decision to learn to trust again. But, as is the case after big storms, trust doesn't rebuild so quickly. It was as if we had built a new reality, but it was based on the same ruins that were left behind by the old one. I didn't know if we could ever really get rid of those dark moments that were left over from all those hidden costs and betrayals. I still remember Cindy sitting in front of me in that room, and we were both silent. Silence became our language. It was the same fear that made us choose each other, but now this fear became almost unbearable. We were like two people trying to find their way back, but not even knowing what they were looking for. All these months of trying to understand why everything happened this way don't give me an answer. I don't know if it was just one big mistake or just an illusion. All I know is that what happened is not coming back. And even if we decided to stay together, I still felt that something was missing. We became different people, and it wasn't always for the better. Can we return to what we used to be? Or has it become a part of our history that cannot be erased? The loss I felt was not only material, although money also played a role. It was a loss at the level of feelings, at the level of no longer being able to trust each other without fear. For fear of being deceived again, for fear of being abandoned again. How do we cope with all this? We try to create a new reality together. But can we really change what has already happened? Today we could sit around and talk, but no amount of talking will give us an answer to the question. Have we done enough? Cindy no longer hides her purchases. I notice how excited she gets when I ask her about these little things. She no longer denies that she has habits, and I no longer pretend not to notice. It's part of our new reality. We have to accept these little struggles, these little lies as part of what we have become. And no matter how hard it is, we can't change it anymore. But we just have to move on like two people who have started together again. But is that really what I wanted? The silence after the storm is not just the absence of noise. It is a time for reflection, a time to accept what we have done. We can change our lives, but can we get back what we have lost? We could say that this is not the end, but in reality it is just a new beginning. And this beginning has no guaranteed results. All these attempts we make to rebuild trust, to rebuild our family, they can only be temporary. They may not change anything. And although we are trying, we still cannot say that we have found the answers. And what will be left after all this? Will there be anything left at all? Or is everything we have experienced just a big illusion against the backdrop of our elections? I don't know, Honora, but I do know one thing for sure: we will not be able to avoid the consequences. And even if everything seems possible again, I cannot forget that there will be a void between us. Is there true forgiveness? Can trust be rebuilt after it has been destroyed? Will we ever be able to forget everything that happened?